Hello. Happy Friday, everybody. I just got some stuff to do here, and I'm all alone. And I figure I might as well jump on and be all alone with you. So I'm going to be doing some arts and crafts stuff here, making some dice. Actually, working on getting some dice masters ready for molding purposes, so I can cast some dice for a buddy. This is time consuming. This is like a very time consuming phase of making dice, but it's not hard. It just takes a long time, and it's pretty zen. And usually when I'm doing it, I have like a movie going on in the background because you don't have to pay a ton of attention all of the time. But this is a kind of a fun way to do it as well. So hopefully somebody jumps in, says hi, maybe ask some questions. I have my directional mic on as well, so people can hopefully hear me pretty well. But the little sanding machine here, the polishing wheel I have, does make a little bit of noise. So if anybody hears it and is bothered by it, let me know. That's it right there, making the noise. Basically, we're just taking this master dice and polishing it down. So each of the facings on it are nice and smooth, without flaws or errors. There's no voids or weird dents or whatever. Because when the masters come in, they're printed on these like really high-end 3D printers, and they have really high resolution, but any flaw in the master at that point will show up as a flaw in every die you make off of it. So they got to be polished, and it's like I said, it's a laborious process. It's not hard; it just takes time. And I am currently on the second phase of polishing on 2 dice. I think there's like 5 phases of polishing, and the first 2 phases that take the longest. They're the ones that you gotta sit there on the wheel here, grinding them down, making sure that they lose all the burrs and all the major scratches and voids. Like this, I'm doing the 4. You can see the 4. And there's a scratch right across the 4. And if I cast the die, or if I make a mold right now, every one will have that scratch. So I have to polish this face down, sand it, really, then polish it. So it's gone. Pretty deep void. So my chat here has been a little wonky. It hasn't been showing everything. I wanted to have some people on today to say hi or to hang out with me, but I could not get the software to work. So if people are talking, I'm going to have to bounce between tabs here, I think, to see your comments. But alas, here we are. It's Friday. I ain't got shit to do. The best part of the phase of life that I'm in right now with all these arts and crafts projects is I am now needing bifocals, right? So my eyesight at a distance is getting better, but my eyesight up close is getting worse. Fun. So now when I'm doing something that's really fine like this. I'm like, I gotta take off my glasses or drop them or whatever. And I'm due for an appointment to get my eyes checked out, but that's gonna get pushed back and pushed back and pushed back because I have kids, and I'd rather spend my money on them. If anybody, there's a handful of people in here. Hopefully, you're not all just gawking and gaping at me. If anybody's got any questions or want to chit chat about something, come on in, make a comment. Let me see if I can see it. If not, I'll have to mess around with the chat settings and see if I can get it to work. Well, there's even more people. Yay. And that scratches a bummer. All right, let's see. YouTube. That there. What if I come over here? Close this. Close that. Open this. Open that. In theory. Dashboard. Oh, I don't want to go there. I'm already there. All right. Close. All right. Allegedly, I am connected. No one's talking, though. Sad. Really. No, close. Close you. So, what's everyone up to? I've got all my my dice nonsense here. What are you doing on a Friday? Got a hot date later? Just finished watching a movie. I earlier, before everyone jumped on, I was watching a indie horror movie on Prime called Antrum. Antrum, which is like a found footage horror, folk horror kind of thing, where these two kids allegedly go to a forest and like dig a hole that takes them into hell, and then the movie itself is like they found that film and people who are watching it are dying, and now you get to watch it so you can die. And it's all right. Probably made on a shoestring budget though, and for that, it's not too bad. There we go. That's good. 3. So when I'm sanding these, right, I go numerically. I start at 1 or the highest number, whatever that is. This is a D20, so it's either 1 or 20, and then I sand it. Sand the face. So unless I started on the 20 and I sanded the 20 until I got it to the finish I wanted, and then I go to 19 and 18 and so on. So this is the second die, and I'm on 3, because I can count. And that means I'm almost done with the second level of sanding and polishing, which is pretty sweet. And then I get to move on to the third level of sanding and polishing. But like I said, the next few rounds are much faster, because you get it mostly smooth on the first couple of runs, and then you're just like glossing it. So for those of you who are following the writing that I put out, I've been churning away on that lit RPG book that has stolen my attention, and I'm closing in on 80,000 words on it, which is big. The Hat Trick, by comparison, which is the most recent release I had, was something like 65,000, 70,000 words, not very big. And this guy is already bigger than that, and I am only just now entering the third act. So it is quite possible that this book could be over 100,000 words, and I haven't written a book that long in a long time. My natural writing sort of happy place has been like right around 75, 85,000, which is, it's a novel. Um, but not a beefy one, not a particularly big one. But alas, I seem to have broken that curse. But it's fun. If you get not following it, it's called the Undead Glitch, and it takes place in the near future. Well, actually, not the near future, but the future. And it's about a immersive, like virtual reality game that a guy winds up kind of getting hired to work in because they have like people working in the game as well as players playing the game, and he's like pretty desperate for money and takes kind of a crappy job working in this game, but it's going to be money and it's good, and there's other stuff going on with his family, but he loads into the game and he's just supposed to be like a merchant. He's literally just supposed to be like in the background doing stuff so he can get paid, and he loads in and instead he's a player. Something glitched on his load, and players don't get paid, but he needs this money, and he winds up like working something out with the company where he can basically be like a tester, sort of, um, and like still be in the game and still get paid as if he were his NPC, but he gets to play the game, which is kind of exciting because he's never been able to play the game because you have to pay and they're really expensive and he's pretty broke. But once he's in the game, because he's glitched, things aren't like functional for him in the right way, and he starts to see that the game is not quite what they advertise it as. And he is in the game for not just his own job, but there might have been some nefarious purposes as well. So it's been really, really fun to write, and I'm basing a lot of it really heavily in AUD lore because the game that he winds up loading into play is a zombie apocalypse. And he is not Adrian, obviously, because Adrian's Adrian. This guy, Seth, is the main character. But Seth is playing in a setting, a town, that closely mirrors the town that Adrian's story takes place in. So you'll start to hear a lot of like street names that are the same, and you'll meet some players and stuff that are named after AUD characters. So it's kind of like my way to like stay writing in Adrian's world, even though AUD is kind of coming to an end again. But it's been really fun to write. Almost. Almost. So what's everybody else up to? Reading, writing, rambunctious, destroying things. Standard Friday night shenanigans. There we go. Much better. Break from that for a second. I'm not seeing any chat comments. So what gives? Oh, and there's a whole bunch of comments. Cortland, you sound like a professional. Thank you. Hello. Yeah, so I am not seeing comments, but I can, let's see, go here. Maybe. Or perhaps go here. Maybe. Hi, Ryan. By the way, thank you for saying boo thang. That's just weird. Why would you do that? So I was originally using this streaming software called StreamYard, which was great. Worked really well. Understood the system, and it wasn't any problem. And then they like quadrupled their price out of the blue. And it was like, all right, yeah, I don't mind paying like $15 a month for, you know, the occasional live chat I do, but I'm not paying 60. Like, that's not cool. I don't know why it's not displaying. Everything's set up correctly. Testing. 1, 2, 3. They have a chat app that apparently isn't integrating properly. Okay, that's working correctly. Started. Okay, so we don't want to do that either. Just troubleshooting this live. Close. How strange. Oh, hey, Joan. Cortland, are you moving to New Hampshire? Or are you just visiting again? Get out of the way. Let's see if that works. Maybe. Maybe not. How many sets do I do at a whack? It depends, Scott. It basically comes down to, like, if I'm making a set for somebody, then I'll just make a set for them. I don't make them commercial because it takes too long and it's too expensive, because I make them like literally, you know, 1 or 2 sets at a time. But I think I do like no more than 3 or 4 sets at a time, because it just takes a long time in the finishing phase to like paint all the numbers and do all that jazz. Right this second, all I'm doing is two specific dice, and they're D20s, which are, you know, the big ones for D&D. And let me do that slide again. You can see they're chonkers. They're big D20s, and these are actually for an author buddy of mine, Troy Osgood, who's actually a lit RPG fella, and he's doing a Kickstarter soon, and he is going to give these dice away. Not these specific ones, these are the masters, but we're going to make dice using these to have as either pledge rewards or stretch goals or something like that. I'm not sure exactly what he's going to do for him, but I'm doing 2 of these for him so he can include them in his Kickstarter. And then after I do this phase, after I get this done, I'll make molds. So we'll be able to cast 2 at a time until I make more molds. And then depending upon how many dice he needs, we'll make molds, a number of molds equal to, you know, whatever volume of dice he makes, to a limit. I'm like not great at making a ton of dice. Yes, moving. Yay, Cortland. Back to the Hillsborough area, I'm assuming. Ryan, do you feel like there will be any psychological ramifications from nanobot VR and the characters or side characters dealing with distinguishing real from virtual reality? In the book, I assume you mean? If you do actually mean in the book, yes. That is a pivotal part of the struggle that the characters in the book have, where they start to realize that, like, what they're shown in the game, because it's VR. Hey, Ed. Because it's VR, they, you know, they're the nanites interface with like their nervous system, and they, you know, basically broadcast a fictional view of reality while they're playing this game. So they see things that aren't there and can hold things that aren't there and so on. But what they realize in the game is that like a lot of the stuff that's supposedly not there is actually there, and some of the stuff is vice versa. And then they get to the point where they're like, well, like now I can't trust my eyes. And I'm like, I'm not sure, what's real and what's not. And also because Seth, the main character, loads in glitched so much, and as the game loads, or as his game continues, he realizes that it's not just the fact that he loaded in incorrectly as a player. He is like an anomaly in the system. So as he's playing, he starts to glitch other things. So one of the other players winds up getting glitched, and then his quests start getting glitched. And he's like working his way through it and managing it. And he kind of starts to figure out how to, work around it. But the glitches are happening for a reason, and that's not making it easier. So really fun to write. It is an awesome mindfuck. It's been really, really fun to write. All right, so I'm up to the next polishing paper. If you guys saw the last one, it was sort of a dark blue. Now I'm on lighter blue. And this will go much, much faster, because at this point, all I'm doing is glossing the layers more. That's good. The last two polishing papers I did would have taken the major flaws down to smooth. And at this point, I'm just making it real shiny. Aha. So if you're curious, I am able to see comments via Facebook, but not YouTube. So if you're watching me on YouTube right now, I cannot see your comments. Why? I don't know. There we go. 18. So yeah, I'm pretty far along on that fella. And that is really exciting. Why can I not find 18? I really am blind. There it is. Because it's like the book is part horror, and because he's loaded into a horror game, like he's surviving the zombie apocalypse, which is supposed to be fictional, but when you're inside it, it feels real. So he is, experiencing the horror of that, and again, can't distinguish reality from the game, which is the point. But also the fact that he's like kind of trapped in the game as well becomes its own level of horror. And then all of the things that he starts to kind of reveal and figure out about the company running the game and how he got into the game starts to be even more horrific. And it's got a lot of sub themes going on in it, which is always fun. Like AUD has resonated with so many people for so long because it has lots and lots of layers going on in the background. Like Adrian's like mental health is there, and his like survivor's guilt, and how he's trying to deal with toxic masculinity and try to be a positive role model. Lots of stuff. Don't go to sleep. Why are you trying to go to sleep? Hello, Wanda. I think that's part of the reason why Adrian's story has been so popular for so long, because there's so many different things going on at the same time in it that work in it from a book standpoint. So I'm hoping this has the same feel. And the main character, Seth, is not a military guy. He's not, doesn't have any fighting experience. He's, he works in sales. He sells the equivalent of cell phones, and has a second job where he's like an online customer service rep for a company. And he's so broke that he actually sells plasma to make ends meet. So he's, he's pretty much a very normal, regular guy. He's just driven. And has just kind of had some bad luck and got into a bad relationship with people or a lady, and he's got kids and he's just trying to figure it out. So he's a pretty identifiable character, I think. I hope. But yeah, I should be done with that by the end of the month, by the end of August. And I'm very optimistic about that. Pretty confident, I should say. I'm pretty confident about hitting that date. I have the house to myself all weekend. Leah took the kids to a like ladies camping retreat weekend, and they won't be back until Sunday afternoon. So I had the house all day today. I'll have it all night tonight. That's why I can do this tonight, because it's easy. And then I'll have the house all day tomorrow, and then most of Sunday. So I'm writing, like that's my thing. I'm not taking time off. My goal for the weekend is 10,000 words. If I can bust out 10,000 words, I will feel extremely accomplished. And today, I think I wrote 5,000 just today. So if I stay on track with that, I might be able to write 15,000 words, which would be the bulk of the end of the book in just one weekend. And it's easy because it's fun. Ryan, can't wait. When can we buy it? I don't have a good answer for you. I am working with Audible very closely on it. They're very interested in it and are considering it for some serious like launch marketing programs. They have a marketing budget to advertise titles just like any other company, and normally I get included in the ones that are like no cost to them, like the monthly deal, the stuff like that. They don't advertise the book. They just put it on sale and put it in the sale category, which is huge. That's enormous. Like incredibly grateful for that. But for this, they are considering doing like actual paid advertising. So they'll come up with like banner art and placements and do some crazy stuff, like maybe have commercials for it. I don't know. We'll see. That's not set in stone. They haven't promised it. But they have been real good to me lately, and I'm pretty optimistic. But the issue is if I do that, I have to give them enough of a runway to release for the release date for them to actually organize and get all that stuff ready. So at a minimum, I'm looking at releasing Undead Glitch in January, because that's like the earliest date that they've said they can do it, and it probably won't be until February. And they are asking for a simultaneous release as well, so all formats will come out at the same time, so I won't be able to sneak out the Kindle of the print ahead of time, which I do often enough. But I am probably going to do a Kickstarter for it, because it's going to be long, and narration is going to be quite pricey. And it's like gaming, right? So it might be really fun to come up with some custom dice for it, and just do a little Kickstarter like I did for Diggory. Nothing outrageous, nothing huge, just a few grand. Hello, Mr. Barnes. And just kind of offset the cost of doing it, because it is really expensive. But we'll see. I'm still undecided on that. Who am I looking to tap for the voice? I am 100% going to do Steve Van Samson again. He did the Hat Trick, and he also did the Colony of Lies sequel to Colony Lost. And the reason why I want to do Steve so badly, and there's a bunch, there's like many reasons why Steve's going to be the guy. Steve's local. Yeah, Scott, hit me up. I've run 4 or 5 successful now and have helped on 3 or 4 others. I am experienced. Anyway, Steve is local. He lives like an hour from me. Steve's like an incredibly smart and kind person and is professional. And I am like thrilled to work with somebody who I have a great working relationship with. And and somebody who like really understands the process, because he's also a writer. He has a few books out. And he has a podcast that he's been running for years now, Retro Redoctopus, which is like a retro entertainment podcast where he talks about stuff from like the 80s and 90s and like all the cartoons and movies and, you know, pop culture stuff from that era. So, you know, for my generation, Gen X and older millennials, or Gen Y, it's great because he's talking about all the stuff that we grew up with. But on there, he does all the audio production. He does like all the sound effects, all the everything. And I don't know if you've listened to Colony of Lies, but he brought some of that in for funsies. And like when they're on the radio, the voice has like radio effects and has like in and out song like noises, and it sounds like a real audio production. And I know he's going to be able to bring that talent to this book and like really punch it up in a theatrical way. It is going to take him longer to do. It is going to be more costly, but if the product is as good as I know it can be, it's going to be absolutely worth it. So yeah, probably January, I'm guessing. Maybe February. And as Scott Goodsword says in the chat, Steve is awesome. If you're curious and you see Scott's name, Scott actually lives pretty local to me. I think you get a little hour and a quarter from me, Scott. And Scott is one of the big head honchos of the New England Horror Writers Association. And he organizes tons of conventions and events and networks, and does a lot of work to promote and assist local writers. So everyone, round of applause for Scott Goodwin. Yay. So yeah, that's that for that. But of course, working on this has pushed back other things. My original plan had been to use this time period to finish up the Diggory series. But that just was not scratching my itch. And I was having a hard time getting it started. And Leah was like, you just want to start the lit RPG. Like, just take like a week and just, get the notes out and get your outline done. That way you'll be ready to go when you finish Diggory. And I jumped into it, and within a week I had like just a mountain of prep work done for it, and had already written like the first 2 chapters. And I was like, I just gotta do this. Like, I gotta get it done. This is the muse that I need to follow right now. So again, I've written, almost the entire book in just a couple months, which is pretty sweet. And it's it's good. I did a panel at Nikon, the big writers convention conference up here, and on the panel was like writer's block and imposter syndrome. And one of the things that I said on the panel was that there are days where you're writing and you're kind of like, it's work and it's hard, and the story's just not coming together, and you have to like write sentences 2 or 3 times, and it's just hard to do that day. And those are the days that I know, like, the writing does not come out good. It just doesn't. And I said on the panel, like, that today's not the day, right? Like, just walk away, do something else. Because if I write and it's hard, that's the stuff that you guys are always like, yeah, it's not very good. And I have learned to listen to that. But the other side of that is that when I am having a blast writing it and it's super fun and it's coming really easy, those are the things that everyone's like, oh man, yeah, that's really good. Like, those characters are great. The dialogue's awesome. The story's fantastic. Like, so when I'm feeling it the other way, I have to pursue it, because I don't know when I'm going to get that feeling again, right? Yeah. Go where the muse takes me, as opposed to drag the muse kicking and screaming to the thing that I think I need to do. And that has taken me years to figure out. Anybody got any other questions? Any other chit-chatty things? Is anybody watching anything? Chris Van Note, what does my shirt say? It says, Nerdy Dads Build Character, which was a Father's Day gift from my wife, because I do a lot of gaming, and my kids, get the pie crust on it from earlier, my kids have started playing D&D, and I run a Dungeons and Dragons class at my kids' school. I actually go in during the school day, and I take 6 kids and I run them through a campaign that's designed for educational and therapeutic purposes to help build classroom camaraderie, deal with bullying issues, help them on subjects that they're struggling with, build social skills, all that jazz. And I go in and do that every other, what did I do? I did Thursdays, I think, every other Thursday. For a while, it was every Thursday, but it got to be a bit much. Anyway, so my wife got me this shirt because it's thematically appropriate. Hey, Anthony. 3, 5, or 5e. Always 5e now because the kids can't really get their hands on anything older than that. And I want them to be able to be like, hey, I really like that, and then easily go get the books at any gaming retailer. My favorite version is 3 and 3.5 because it's kind of crunchy, and I like the multi-class stuff that you can do with it, and I don't know, it's just got more depth. But it's hard to get, and the books are expensive now because they're kind of collectible. And it's also way harder to teach, which is funny because when Dungeons and Dragons 3 and 3.5 edition, the 3rd edition, and then the updated 3rd edition, which is 3.5, when those two were out, it was like, oh man, this is such an easy version of D&D because it was considerably less complicated than 2nd edition. But now 5th edition is even simpler. And now looking at 3.5, it's like, Jesus, what a shit show. I am a national treasure. Thank you. Your kids are welcome to go to the school that my kids are at. It is a private school, though. It is extremely expensive, and I have to sell blood to afford it. But that's what my wife wants, and that's what I want. I want my kids to have every opportunity they can. But yeah, they love it. The kids are, it's really great. There's some just really, really bright kids that are just a little shy and, need that structure to be social, and the game gives them that. What the hell I just did? Did one. All right, I'm doing them out of order. Bad, Chris. No donut. And then, there's kids who are like struggling with math, right? And if you know anything about D&D is just like math with a story built around it. So I can build the adventure and build their characters and build their problems, the scenarios for them to work on the kind of math that they need to. And when they're doing it in the game, they don't realize they're doing it, right? Because it's like, all right, you have to calculate whether or not the spell can travel that far. And, once they have the context to do that math skill, all of a sudden, math's easy. And we've had so much success the last, God, this coming year will be the 3rd year I've done it. So grateful I have the opportunity, grateful it's being successful. Oh, and most interestingly enough, I do it for the upper elementary grades, so grades 4, 5, and 6. And Willow, my eldest, is going into 4th grade this year. So they'll be able to join my campaign, which is fun. Usually I run 2 or 3 campaigns during the course of the year, like storylines that, run and finish. So they'll probably be able to play in at least one of them. Can't let them have a spot if there's other people who want to rotate in, though. We can always play at home. Ha ha ha. But in the chat earlier, I don't know if he's still here. I can't see who is in the chat. I can just see that a bunch of people are in the chat. Cortland, who I was chatting with earlier because he's moving back to New Hampshire, he and I kind of grew up together. He went to the same middle school and the same high school I went to. And Cortland is one of the motherfuckers who would sit around on the weekend with me and watch Romero movies ad fucking nauseum. And we would sit around and theorize about how we would survive if the zombie apocalypse happened in our town. And we would sit there for hours. Like, we would be there for, we'd be up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning discussing, like, okay, well, if it happened here, this is where we go. If it happened at night, this is what we would do. If the power went out, this is what we do. I mean, we had so many scenarios, and we just like troubleshooted everything. And an enormous portion of those conversations fed into the story that became Adrian's Undead Diary. Like, a lot of the stuff that we had kind of figured out as kids, I had already figured out, right? So it's like, all right, well, if this happens, then I know that we can do this, and I know this is an option, and whatnot. So Cortland was a huge part of my genesis as a writer. So if you're still there, buddy, I love you. I appreciate you. I owe you at least a couple beers. He was also one of the guys who was in my regular gaming groups and played in a lot of our games until you met Susan Eastman. Susan Eastman, I don't want to badmouth you. You were always very kind to me, but he was crazy over you and disappeared for like 8 months to go hang out with you. And we were all like, all right, he's got a girlfriend. We love you. So, Susan, I'll never forgive you for stealing my friend for a year. But he had fun, so it's all good. Thanks, Wanda. Yeah, so much of getting a kid to like work on stuff like that, and like come out of their shell in regards to things that they don't think they're good at or whatever, is giving them context and giving them a real world reason to use it. And if you can couple it with something that's fun, then all the better. And for me, gaming has been just enormous. Like, I was a struggling kid. Like, I had a lot of trouble focusing in school, and everyone knew I was a bright guy, but I just was not interested and did not care about a whole lot. But when I got into role playing and miniatures games and stuff like that, all of a sudden it was like I had a reason to read and a reason to learn how to do all these different math things and a reason to show up and get good grades, and everything just kind of gelled for me. So very grateful for that. Very grateful. I was joking around. I don't remember if I mentioned it on one of the later last streams that I did, but this has been the year of poison ivy for me. We bought the house that we're in February of last year, and you move in during the winter, and the outside is just kind of a we'll deal with that later. And then last year, we realized that the property had a shit ton of Japanese knotweed on it, which, if you're unfamiliar with Japanese knotweed, it's invasive and it spreads really easily, and it's very hard to get rid of. And I spent the entire year last summer at least, just trying to deal with it and nip it in the bud. And there's like 2 or 3 different ways you can get rid of it, and one of them is like you excavate your entire property and get rid of it. But if that's the case, it's hazmat because it's invasive and it costs a fortune to get rid of. I was like, all right, well, we just like flat out can't afford to pay for the hazmat removal of an acre of land. and then you can like trim it and cut it back and smother it a little bit, but that's really slow and takes a long time. Or you can spray it. Glyphosate, glyphosate kills it, but you have like a very specific window that you can spray it in. It's like 1 week in the fall when it flowers, and that's it. And it takes the I have to redo that one. It takes the poison down into the rhizome, which is way below the soil, and during the winter it just dies. And the next year you come back and you see if it took it, because less will grow. And this year, like a quarter of it grew back, which is great. But now that we have more yard, because we killed all the knotweed in a bunch of sections, now we're like trying to clear it out and make it usable. So we put in a patio in the back corner of our property, and I was clearing out all these like ground vines and stuff and whatnot, and just like digging and leveling and getting rid of shit. And it turns out that all the ground vines were not benign; they were poison ivy. And I got poison ivy all over my arms, all over my legs, all over my stomach. Got so bad I had to get antibiotics and steroids, and it went away. And then I got it again the second time, and that one just kind of like went away. It wasn't that bad. And the third time I got it from my kids who were riding on a trail and rode through poison ivy that was on the side of the trail. And at the end of the ride, I just picked up, their bikes and threw them in the back of the car, and their wheels and the pedals and all that jazz were just covered in poison ivy oil. And I got it real bad that third time. And it was like, it got infected and it went up my arm. Like, oh my God, it was atrocious. Like, I've never had it like that before. I went to the doctor and they were like, yeah, so poison ivy. I'm like, yeah, it's pretty bad. And they're like, yeah. Itchy, whatever, man, flu. And I was like, no, I mean, it's pretty bad. Like, I like, this is the third time I've had it. And the doctor was like, okay, yeah, we'll get you on some steroids. And I was like, can I just show you my upper arm? And she was like, yeah, sure. And I lifted my sleeve, and my skin was bright red. Like, I had legit, like a full on skin infection. And she was like, oh, we got to get you amoxicillin. Yeah, I figured, I don't think prednisone's going to cut it this time. Scott. You can hire goats. So locally, there is a couple of people who do it. One place is really expensive, but they do everything for you. They deliver, I don't know how many goats, but they fence it off, and someone sits there and manages them, and you don't have to do anything. And the other place is really inexpensive, but you have to do your own fencing and you have to manage them, and it's not that much. But the goats can just eat it and they just poop it out. And once they digest it, it no longer will spread, which is pretty sweet. The issue is with Japanese knotweed, with poison ivy, is they just got to be back there a long time because we have a lot of it. So eventually we're going to keep doing the yank and remove and be really careful. Spraying it doesn't really do anything, and we don't really want to spray because we don't want to put those chemicals into the soil here if we can avoid it. The knotweed we have to spray because it's the only way that we can really get rid of it. Again, without paying tens of thousands of dollars to have the property excavated, and even then, that doesn't guarantee. It doesn't guarantee that that it's going to be gone. So. Nuke it from orbit. If I could afford a nuke, I would seriously think about it. This stuff is such a pain in the ass. But yeah, this has been the summer of poison ivy. But it's been a month since I've had it. And the real bitch of it is when I had it really, really bad. I was at the Audible headquarters for the Audible Summit, And that was when I was like, hey, I think this is going to be really bad. And it just kept getting worse the entire conference. And I was so self-conscious because it just kept getting redder and bigger and bigger. And it was like, fuck, like, Jesus, I look like a leper. So I was really, really self-conscious. If you look at the those headshots that I got from Audible, the ones where I'm wearing like the flowery shirt and I'm leaning on something, if you look like at my sleeves, you can actually see how red it is, like, and how badly it was spreading. But luckily, it doesn't show up in the pictures too much. But alas, I've been good, and we we have a patio now. The patio is awesome. Really happy about that. Of course, we've used it like twice since we put it in because the kids have camp and work, and we've been visiting Nana up in Maine. Break for a second. Oh. There we go. Much better. It is it is a little spendy. But it's definitely an option that we may wind up doing in a year or two, maybe next summer, because by then I think we'll have it under control enough that it wouldn't have to be for a week that we'd have goats here. And of course Leah, my wife, is like, what, we can just have goats in the backyard? That's what we're doing, everybody. And then I was like, oh, it's going to be $400 a week for goats? Shit. Maybe we won't have goats next week. However, from a nature balance standpoint, goats is where you want to be. We bought my wife bought a 3D printer for the kids for Christmas and Hanukkah last year. And because I am who I am, it has been mostly my toy. And, print stuff for them. But I'm printing out a lot of stuff for D&D, like terrain and monsters, so I can have cooler tables. So I'm going to have to come back to this one. Leave it there. But that one, this one, here. All right, we're going green. Green. This is the most abrasive of the polishing papers. There's a void on the 13 on this other die that is not coming out, so I'm going to have to nuke it for Morbit. Let's start over on that one face again. Otherwise, the flaw will show up on every die. We don't want that. Nice, pretty shiny dice. Yeah. And I did the AUD dice for the AUD Kickstarter, which were really fun. D6s with Otis and the Jinx Fairy on them. And then I commissioned a whole D&D set with the Jinx Fairy on it, which was really fun. And then for the Diggory set, I did the Shard D6s, which look all eldritchy and cool. And those were really fun to make. Almost. But if I did a Kickstarter for the Lit RPG, I don't know what I would do. Maybe I would Didn't do dice at all. And but it's a game book, so I feel like I'm obligated. I got to do something, right? Pardon the buzzing. There you go. All right. That's all that took. What's everybody else reading right now? I picked up a bunch of books at that Nikon conference because when you're there, that's what you do, right? I've been trying to read those. Another local author, Eric Nunnally, wrote a book called The Queen of Saturn and the Prince in Exile, which is like a semi-autobiographical sci-fi novel of growing up in Boston in the 70s. And it's sort of like a Superman origin story where, there's this young black kid growing up in poor Boston. Oops. And his mom tells stories about being from Saturn and how she's royalty and he's a prince, and he just thinks his mom is eccentric, and then stuff starts to happen and his mom's stories start to sound more and more plausible, and it was really fun. I really enjoyed it. I read it in one sitting. It's not a very long book, but it was really interesting. Not the kind of book that I would say that I normally pick up to read, but definitely really enjoyed it. And I'm trying to read J.F. Du Bois' God in the Shed, which is like a Lovecraftian horror story about eldritch monsters and such. Ooh, whoa. Now my chat's showing up. What the hell? Hey, I'm back. Okay, here we are. All right, let me answer all these questions over here. Havoc 0083. I was originally talking about Undead Glitch, which is a lit RPG book that I'm writing. Hi, Jackie, lurking on Facebook. Hey, Fred in Vancouver. What did I use to pave my patio? So it's like a significant layered process, right? So we had to level it, which we just did by relocating the earth. Once we got that level, I put down a shit ton of sand, like paving sand, to get it all nice and uniform, leveled that, and then put down paver base, which is kind of like concrete-ish, but also kind of rocky, and covered the entire bed of sand with that, leveled that, and then put in pavers, which were 16 by 16. And I believe it's 10 pavers on a side, 8 pavers on a side. So it's a big patio. And then you get it all locked in, and then I did a retaining wall around it to hold it together and give it a nice uniform edge. And then once I got all that in, I did the polymer sand, which it's a big heavy bucket, and you sprinkle it on, and it's ultra fine, like super fine powder, and you just brush it, and you brush it and brush it and brush it until you fill all the gaps in between, kind of like grout. And then once it's gone, you spray with water, and the water soaks in and activates the polymer in the sand and cements the pavers together. And I did 2 rounds of that, and it came out awesome. Came out great. $400 a week. I can buy goats for less. That's right. Scott Blinn, what made you go with a diary type story with AUD as opposed to a classical story format?
the original idea that was going on in my head was I was writing that story for my buddy Joe. I had gotten a third shift job similar to Adrian, and he had been daring me to write a story. And I said, all right, I'm going to write a diary format story because I think that'll be easy, and I don't think it's been done before. And it turns out it had, but I had no way to know. And it was me. It was Chris surviving the story, and I sent it off to him, and was like having a really great time. And he was like, "Nah, dude, you gotta go public with this. Let's make a website for it," kind of thing. And I said, "Well, if I'm gonna do that, it can't be me. Like I'm not gonna write the book about me. So let me turn Chris in this story into a character." And that's when Adrian was invented. And Adrian is, for all intents and purposes, me. So Adrian's sense of humor is me. The way he talks is me. A lot of his like life experiences are similar to mine. Because again, the story was originally me writing it for my buddy as like something fun. And of course it took off on the website, and very quickly turned into a thing. And, Adrian became a more robust character, because, it was more than just a casual story. We had hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of daily readers. Um, Towards the end, thousands of daily readers, and a book deal happened, and yada yada yada. But the diary format's easy, easy for me at least, because I don't have to like I don't have to worry about the purple prose of a story. I can just like do it. I can just be matter of frank, and I can speak from a place of I saw this, I did that, um, and I really like it because it gives a different kind of access to the thought process of a character, um, because you can be with them as they are thinking through what's going on. And in a book like AUD, where so much of the story is like him trying to figure out what the fuck is going on, being able to do that in a diary way, and having you see his mistakes and some of his lines of logic, and also the way I wrote it, I coupled it with the side fictions, the short stories, which are outside of his um, point of view. You get to see the things that he doesn't see, so it like kind of comes together. You get all of those facets of his experience, which in retrospect was a really cool idea. um, I am so Adrian, yeah. um, and at the time I was just like, hey, let's try this, it'll be fun. And it's turned into a whole thing. It's like a genre of writing now, and I don't want to take credit for having invented it or started it, but I think Adrian's story made writing stories like that in that genre a whole lot easier. Whole lot easier. And Mark Tufo's wrapping up Zombie Fallout again with book 25, although I think he might actually be done with it. And I'm talking about wrapping up Adrian with book 16. I don't know what people are going to do. Plenty of other writers in the genre that are putting out really high quality stuff, though. Hopefully, you'll read the other stuff we write. Mark's got Devil's Den and lots of other great projects going on. And I've got Diggory and the Lit RPG stuff, and Morin's still out there. Love to get back to Colony Lost at some point. Primal Hunter, yep, very popular Lit RPG. It's not quite Dungeon Crawler Carl level, but it's still very, very popular. saying to Leah and to some of the guys that I've been hanging out with and gals, the writers, that like lit RPG is essentially the Venn diagram of my life, right? Where it's gaming, which I've been a gamer for 30 plus years now. I was a game developer for years, and I'm still friends with a lot of game developers. And then you factor into that the writing and like my love of science fiction and fantasy and all that jazz. And it's like, why am I not writing lit RPG? Like, it seems kind of stupid. So we're going to give it a shot, and I'm enjoying it so far. And I think it's similar enough to the other stuff I've written that people will really enjoy it. Obviously, if you're not into hearing about game mechanics stuff, it's going to be a little bit, long in the tooth. But you can skip it. You do not have to read it or listen to it. And the cool thing about my story, Undead Glitch, is that the game mechanics matter. Which, I mean, in every lit RPG, the game mechanics matter. But him sorting out how the game mechanics work is a big part of determining reality, and like understanding what's going on. So you could skip it, but it's like the side fictions in AUD. You're missing stuff. Any other questions there, kiddos? Got a good crowd tonight. A couple dozen people on. Where's 12? There's 12. I wrote the Diggory series in the same diary and short story format as AUD because I enjoyed writing like that. And again, because Diggory's story is like intensely psychological in terms of him trying to come to grips with his reality, such as it is, that I thought it would just lend itself to that style of story. And it has. I think it's been good. And I discovered that I really like writing, at least in terms of volume, in that way. Like it's easy for me to generate a lot of story when I write like that. And it's good story too. Like I'm happy with it. How many books have I started and then quit writing halfway through? One, I think. Probably one, where I actually just kind of like gave up on it. Generally speaking, once I start something, I have to follow through. Like it drives me nuts. I have to at least finish the book. Now, finishing a series, I can drag my ass on because once the book is done, I can be okay with that. So, like the Dry Earth trilogy that I wrote, as W.J. Orion, the YA sci-fi, that third book has been due for like 5 or 6 years now, but it didn't sell. Like it didn't do well at all. It got great reviews, but never found an audience. So I know that if I take the time to write that book, like I'm basically working for free for 6 months. And as I said, I have kids and bills, and I can't just like take that time to speculate. I have to like write stuff that I think will be successful. So in that regard, I have left some series on the table. The Reemergence, I have 5 books on the Reemergence and won't be writing anymore. But that was sort of an open-ended series anyway. It didn't have like an arc that I was going towards. It was just like books in this universe. So, but books that I've just kind of like abandoned halfway, just the one. I have done a lot of prep on books. Like a lot of writers say that they outline it, where they literally, go chapter to chapter, and this is what happens here, and this is what happens here. I don't do that. I don't outline a book in that way. But what I do is prep work. I'll do character treatments where all the major characters get like a file where they have all their notes and all the things that I want to make sure I remember about them, and then I'll do a quick outline of the story, just like 10 plot points kind of a deal. I'll research locations. I'll make sure I know the science of things in case science is a factor. Um, for this lit RPG book, for example, I developed an entire game system to use just for this book. Um, and the game system was designed very specifically for the story to enhance the story and give me the storytelling opportunities that I needed. Uh, so, I mean, I had like 20 or 30 pages of writing notes before I even started writing the story itself. Um, and a lot of projects die at that stage where, I'm a week into doing all of that work and I'm like, yeah, this isn't as fun as I thought it was going to be, or this is going to be way harder than I thought it was going to be, or I lose interest. Because when I find out what I'm going to have to write or how I'm going to have to write it to make it feasible, well, that's not really interesting anymore. Or I get pulled away by something else. A deadline that I need to hit gets moved around, or something. I lose a few weeks to something, and then all of a sudden, well, now I've got to get back to writing this other thing, so that gets shelved. Um, on my computer, I have folders of stories that may never be, that I've got a ton of prep on. And we'll see. Maybe one day, some of them are definitely worth coming back to see if they have enough sort of gas in the tank. Jackie, you're reading along as I post chapters on Patreon, which is awesome, by the way. I love being able to do that because getting that feedback while I'm writing is incredibly valuable. And also, it's just rewarding to know that people are digging it as you're writing it, which was a gift that AUD gave me because I posted all those chapters in real time on the website, right? So I've said this before, but each entry has a date, and the date that is on that entry was the day that it was posted online, right? So if Adrian posts on March 3rd, that entry went live on March 3rd. And people would have to sit and wait until the next one came out, and so on. But being able to have people read it and then comment in real time and give me feedback in real time was really great, because it kept me interested and kept me invested, and helped me identify some plot bunnies that were going to be a problem, because like people would be like, hey, wait a minute, if he does that, then that's going to happen. Like, fuck, I didn't think of that. So it was like kind of having crowdsourcing editing. Do you change the story based on the feedback from Patreon? I have made changes. Yeah, absolutely. There have been people raising their hand and being like, hey, does that make sense, or this isn't very fun, or I kind of don't like what that person said, and like I take that to heart. I'm not going to change something from Patreon if someone's preference is a certain way, right? If they're like, well, I would just rather you did it this way, right? Well, that's an opinion, right? Now, if a bunch of people all come out and say, yeah, you probably shouldn't do that, well, that's not an opinion. That's a bunch of people identifying a potential problem with the story. And in that case, I definitely listen closer. And then there are times when people catch just flat out errors, continuity mistakes on my part that are, that I need to go back and fix. Or, they'll point out that, like, oh, he wouldn't have done that, or she wouldn't have done that because back in chapter 7, they picked up this tool which would have solved the problem right off the bat. Oh shit, you're right. I forgot they had that. and then the story gets changed. So yeah, it's incredibly useful for people to comment on Patreon, because I read every comment, every single one, and they all matter. So, and it's, I think it's just kind of cool. Like as a fan, it's kind of cool that you get like early access to stuff, and that you have that creator's ear. Like if you comment on Patreon, I'm gonna see it because I have those messages as priorities. If you comment on Facebook or on my author page or on Blue Sky or any of those jazzes, like I'll get to it when I get to it. But Patreon, I go right straight to because it is that important. Doing pretty good here. I got 2 more sheets, 2 more layers of polishing to do. I'll be able to get these done tonight, I think, which will be great. So I can make molds tomorrow. We can start casting prototypes next week, which is always fun. Where you're like, all right, what do we want them to look like? And I do not know what Troy is going to want these to look like. I know he wants to do a couple different designs, like ultra rare designs and stuff like that. So we'll figure out what those look like. I want to try and get him to come here to do it. He lives like, I don't know, maybe an hour from me. I think less. And it would be really cool to have him here, to actually be a part of the process of making the dice for his Kickstarter. He's a big lit RPG guy, as I said. One of the things when I worked in game development, one of the things that I did was continuity. I would keep track of all the data, make sure that the stories, made sense, and facts didn't get lost. And it's a whole hell of a lot easier to keep track of someone else's continuity. But when it's my continuity, I remember shit wrong. I take notes in a different way. I don't separate myself from the work enough to be analytical, which is why you hire an editor, right? So even though I'm naturally pretty good at it, I still need help. Is that a handheld battery-operated polisher? No, it plugs in. And this is actually a pottery wheel. It's a little, I don't know, 30th of a horsepower pottery wheel, which I don't think would ever work for pottery. It's too damn small. But it works perfectly for polishing, sanding and polishing dice. So these different papers, like this one's pink, they're different colors. They're called Zona papers. You can get them on Amazon. They're just like incredibly fine grit sandpapers. And I put down a layer of double-sided adhesive on these. So if you peel this off, there's a sticky layer below. And you just go through, you start with the highest grit and you do all the facings and keep going down. And what I'm looking for is uniformity. So it doesn't have to be perfectly smooth at any level until I get to the final layer. But what I'm trying to do is get each face of the die completely uniform. So there's no divots, no bumps, no slopes, no rough parts. It needs to just look uniform. And as long as each layer is uniform, when I move off of it, when I get to the final end, they will be fine. And things get scratched, things get messed up. 6. And it's just important to try and get it right. Because again, these are the masters, and fall down. However these turn out during the polishing process is how every other die I make turns out.
So if I take the time to make these really, really well done now, it will save me hours and hours and hours and hours and hours of fixing dice that got casted with a flaw. And when you're doing a lot of dice, that can be like the amount of time that I'm taking to fix these masters could be the amount of time I have to take to fix every kind of die that I make later on. And it's like I can either do this once or I can do this 100 times. Well, I'm going to do it once. And especially, it's cool when I get to do stuff like this, like lives, and I can just shoot the poo with people, which makes the time pass and makes it more entertaining. What do I cast them with? 2-part epoxy resin, just standard. You can get it at most craft stores, Michaels, or you can get it online. There's all different kinds. The stuff that is most accessible, the stuff that's like in the stores, is I think it's called Let's Resin, by a company called Alumalite, and it's really easy to work with. You can get small containers of it, and it's just mix it 50-50, half of one, half of the other, and as soon as you mix it, the clock is ticking because it starts to harden. Usually you have about 15 minutes of what they call pot time, which is how long you have to work with it before it starts to harden. So you mix it and then you pour it into the mold. And depending upon what you want to look like, you add in stuff, right? So you can add in like inks and micas and sediments and filaments and foils and glitters and all different kinds of stuff like that. I'll take a picture of these because I can, so we can show progress. And then you pour them into the mold, and at that point, not everybody else does this, but I put them in a pressure pot out in the garage, and the pressure pot squeezes all of the air out of the resin, so you get nice crystal clear dice. Otherwise you get like bubbles, and the bubbles float to the surface, and you get all these imperfections, and it's ugly. No one likes that. Did you get the audiobook rights back for all of the AUD books? I kind of. The first 4 books are still tied up in contracts with James, the original narrator, and I can't get all of those rights back for a little bit. But everything else is with me in its entirety, which is why the books have been like re-released, because I've been getting them out of the previous contracts, and when I do that, I have to re-release them under new contracts, and that technically is a whole new release, even though it's the same book with no changes. So good question though, Beaver. Scott, Rust in Peace, the story of the album from Megadeth, second greatest album ever made. Any music books I've enjoyed? Good question. Music books. Read a lot of movie books. Read a lot of TV show books. I don't know as if I've ever read any music books. I feel like I have to, but I can't actually recall. Will there be an omnibus part 2? My hope is yes. The cop-out answer to that is that you can, start reading the series at book 5 after the omnibus, because the omnibus is book 4, which is all together, and then book 5. So that's what you can do now. But when we originally bundled it, all 4 books as one, you could do a second omnibus in a series. So the original plan was omnibus 1, books 1 through 4, omnibus 2, books 5 through 8, and so on and so on. After the first omnibus came out,
Audible changed their rules and said you cannot have multiple omnibuses in a series. So in order to have a functional omnibus, I would have to take down the first omnibus and then re-release a new, more complete omnibus with more books in it, which is an enormous pain in the ass. However, when I was in Jersey at Audible's headquarters, I sat down with some of the people and I was like, hey, so this is bullshit. Like, it's just bullshit. Like, why can't I do that? Why can't you do that? Like, why? Like, it just hurts people that I can't bundle this together and give them a deal and give them a reason to keep going. And legitimately, the guy who, like, I was talking to was like, wait, you can't do that? I was like, no, your system does not support it and specifically says you can't. Not only is it not capable, you say you can't. And again, that's nonsense. And he was like, that is nonsense. So when I left that discussion with him, he very much was like, no, that's like, we're hurting people by not doing that. And he was going to take it to whoever it was that made the decision at Audible to see if they could undo it. So if they undo it, then I'll be able to put out an omnibus for the second omnibus immediately, because I have all those rights correct now, and I could literally put it out the next day. But they just won't let you. So that's where we're at. And also, it means moving forward, when I put out collections on Audible, I need to be considerably more thoughtful, because it does not work the way I thought it did. Of course, I mean, the omnibus came out in like 2017, I think. 2016, 2017. So, it doesn't work now like it did then. But we'll see. Like, I know I'm going to do a Diggory collection once the fourth book comes out. Be able to get the whole series all in one go, which I think will be a lot of fun for people. And then Elmoran, I can get the rights back on Elmoran at any time just for asking. The contracts on that have expired, and they just renew annually unless I say no. But Audible owns the recording on it. I don't, because Audible Studios published it. So if I got the rights back, I would not get the audio back, and I would have to have them all re-recorded, which would be really expensive for a series that did not do great. But I would love to get that trilogy back and like kind of edited and punched up, because it was, I would make changes, and I would put that out as a box set. But we'll see. But no, Scott, I don't think I've read any music books. I can't. I feel like I read something like Run DMC stuff or something, something from that era, Beastie Boys. I was really big into hip hop when I was young, and I feel like I would have read something, but I'm not sure. Recordings are expensive. Not asking for an exact number, just a general idea. What does it cost to have a book recorded? Great question. It varies by the narrator. Different narrators have different rates, but all rates are quoted in per finished hour. So however long the final recording of the book winds up being is what they base what they charge off of. And the average charge for a SAG-AFTRA approved narrator is $250 per finished hour. So easy math on that. On a 10-hour audiobook, you have to pay approximately $2,500. Cold hard cash. The better narrators, the ones that have more success or award nominations or are in higher demand for whatever reason, can charge much higher than that. Um, the big name guys like Scott Brick, Sean Renette, Ray Porter, um, Bronson Pinchot, Will Wheaton, like the guys who are doing like the major books, they're getting $1,000, $2,000 an hour to record because their voices and their performances are so good. Um, so the omnibus, they're about 40 hours long. So if I had to pay to have them re-recorded, it would be 10 grand, something like that, which I just don't have laying around. But luckily, I own all those recordings that James did back in the day. He has been paid for them, and I do not have to pay him again to use them, but I do have to wait for the contracts to elapse. Danielle Cohen, the narrator for the Loki series. If you haven't listened to the Loki audiobooks, they're phenomenal. Carl's story is just the balls, and Danielle crushes the character of Loki. Like, her audition for Loki was like, oh, that's it. We don't need to hear anymore. Like, she just like channeled that character. And she's originally from the area that the book takes place in and knows all the accents because it's like where she grew up. So it was super duper easy for her to just like step into the character. But Danielle is like theatrically trained, award nominated. I'm not sure if she's won some stuff, but she's just like unbelievable. And she does a shitload of historical romances. She narrates a ton of them, and she's backed out like a year. And she gets paid way more than $250 an hour, but she's amazing, and she's worth it. And that's what you get what you pay for. When you hire somebody who doesn't have a lot of experience but is willing to work cheap, you are rolling dice. So, and I make dice. I don't like rolling them with audiobook quality. Danielle's fantastic though, and like I said, if you haven't listened to those audiobooks, they're really good, and they tie in with Adrian's story directly, which makes them even more fun. Weird question by Sean Nobles. How much of Adrian is from your life, or how much of him is you? I said earlier that Adrian is essentially me. Personality-wise, sense of humor-wise, like he's just me. The difference is I did not enlist in the military, but Adrian did. And his family situation is a little bit different than mine. I have a much bigger family than Adrian. His is different, but his parents are more distant than mine. My mom was pretty distant, but that's a whole other story. But my dad was very present and was a great dad. And Adrian's dad's not exactly the greatest guy. But I did a lot of bodyguard work. I did a lot of site security and bodyguard work and concert security and all that jazz. So, Adrian working in security, bouncing and stuff like that, like that's me being able to bring in some of those stories that really happened into the books because they're just fun. But yeah, we're very, very much the same person in many ways. Which, if you like Adrian, probably like me. If you don't like Adrian, you're probably not going to like me. Whenever somebody leaves a review or talks shit about Adrian, I'm like, well, that's a person I'm not going to be friends with. Not because they left a shitty review, but because if they didn't like the character, they're definitely not going to like me.
Adrian's got quite the story. It's like one of the weirder redemption arc stories out there. And he alienates people real fast. Like a lot of people do not like him by like the 5th page of the story. The last AUD Kickstarter, a few of us bought into a D&D game with you. Will you be doing another game for the next Kickstarter? I don't know. It's a really good question. Logistically, it was really hard to manage. And I had a friend who had a more robust streaming platform help, which is the only way it happened at the time. And he's a friend. So it's hard for me to get frustrated when he's unable to do things the way on the schedule my business needs to operate at. But now that I have my own kind of streaming platform here and I could just control it myself, it might be feasible to do again. I don't know what game I would do. Like we did All Flesh Must Be Eaten for the AUD role-playing game. Which is a really simple, zombie apocalypse system. But yeah, I don't know. It would be cool. It sold out, I believe, which was cool, and raised a lot of money for the books, which is awesome. It's funny that the Kickstarter for the AUD hardcovers raised, I forget, like 24 or 25,000. And when it was all said and done, I didn't really make any money on it because so many things got paid for. And I wound up using a lot of that money to buy more than the minimums on the swag because like your price drops dramatically if you buy way more. But that meant I was spending way more. So, I still have a bazillion posters, for example, because the price for 500 posters was only like $20 more than the price for half that. But the challenge coins, I have a ton of the challenge coins, I have a ton of the posters, I have a ton of the bookmarks, all that stuff. And the hardcover books wound up being much more expensive at the wholesale level than quotes initially indicated. Because the shipping prices got a little wacky on import duties. I had to pay to import them because they were printed in England. And at the time, when we got the quotes, the import duties were only going to be like $1 a book, which is no big deal, whatever. But then it wound up being like $3.50 a book, and I didn't charge that $3.50, and I sold several hundred books. So having to pay an extra, couple bucks over, I think I sold, I don't know, 300 or 400 books. That was like $1,500 of just fees. So when I can do something like the game where, it brings in $400 or $500 for the Kickstarter, and like doesn't cost me money per se, God, that's a huge help. Huge help. Plus it's fun, right? Like it's just really fun. I'll do both of these yet? I'm not sure. Compare and contrast. And I did. Okay. Moving along. I did light blue. And the last one, the final stage of polishing, is just white. And then they get washed with mild soap and water, mild soap and warm water, to make sure all of the dust that has been generated by the paper or the resin is cleaned away. Some people put them in an ultrasonic bath, but I don't have one. But I'll take a soft bristle toothbrush to it and make sure nothing is clogging up the numbers. Because if anything's clogging the number on the something is clogging the number on this when I cast the mold, then the number will be incorrect. You kind of had fun. You do it again. Good. I'm glad. I would definitely make changes, though. I would do it differently. It was an awesome learning experience, and I do think that people generally had a great time. I wanted to release the recording of it, but my buddy never got me the recording in a way that I could release it. So it happened, but I can't prove it. Is there a web spot we can go to buy the leftover swag? No. The swag is just like in storage. I have been using it like in person at conventions and book signings and stuff like that, is like the stuff that I bring. And every once in a while, I'll post somewhere like, "Hey, got some challenge coins if anybody wants any," or "Hey, I got posters." Um, the right now, the easiest way would be to just message me, and I can, show you what's left over, and we can figure out a price that makes sense, and then just pay me by a PayPal or Venmo. That's currently how I do it, because setting up like an e-store on my website would be probably not worth it, because I wouldn't actually sell that much. Yes, it would look legitimate, but I think my reader base is trustworthy in that regard. I was there. I'll back you up. Thank you, Beaver. Yeah. I had a long time ago, when the website was kind of ending and the books were starting to come out, this notion that I was going to like do like a Adrian Con or Chris Con, where it would just be me, and I would rent out like a hotel conference room, and I would just invite people in, and we would just sit around and shoot the shit all day. But I have fans from all over. I don't know how the hell they would make the trip to wherever I would do it, and would I be able to get enough people in to make renting a room worthwhile? I don't know. Scott, when is the next signing in New Hampshire? Officially, I think I'm only signed up for the Laconia Library in October, I think it is. Early, mid-October, up in the Lakes region. They're doing a first of its kind author event for Halloween. I'm doing that for them, and I have been kind of approached by the Barnes and Noble in Keene that just opened up to come and do a signing there, but that's like very preliminary, and I don't even know if that'll happen. Do you ever going to do any book signings farther out west? Yes. So West Coast is tough because we've got the kids, and they're at the age where they don't travel particularly great, and flying makes book signings really hard. If I had like a publisher who was dealing with all the logistics of sending stuff and sending it to bookstores, and there are people signing for it, and they had like a staff, it would be way easier. But because I'm mostly indie, it's just me doing all this stuff, and I would have to like have the books shipped somewhere to someone, and then meet them, which is all doable, and I've done it before to different places, but it's just logistically a lot harder to do. Um, Next year, I definitely have committed to attending AuthorCon down in Virginia, which is further west, not by a ton, but further west, definitely further south. Um, and that's a great convention because it's all writers, primarily all writers. And when it was called Scares That Care, I went twice and it was fantastic both years. So I'm doing that. As far as beyond that point, I did one in Austin when Bad Wabbit was launched. I went down and hung out with Anthony Castro down there for a weekend, which was great. That was a lot of fun. I do want to get back to Texas at least because, pardon me, I have a lot of people that I'm close to in that area, and they have houses that we could stay at, and it would be really easy to bring the kids. Um, so west of that, I don't have anything set. I would love to, though. I would love to. Yeah, I think I could get enough people to make it worthwhile. It's just a question of like financially, does it make sense for us to do it? Because it's expensive, and if it's just me, it's not too bad. But if we're flying the family to make it like a thing, then it gets really expensive. But I don't do book signings to make money because I can't bring enough books to sell to make money. Um, like I physically can't transport them. So, but that being said, I don't want to like go broke. I'm at the level in my career in terms of popularity that when a convention happens, they're like, "Ooh, he's gonna come," and they're happy that I'm considering coming. But I'm not big enough where every convention will just automatically comp me a hotel room in space, which saves a lot of money. I mean, it happens every once in a while where the convention's like, "Yeah, sure, you can have a free table or X entry fees, or we'll pay for your hotel." It does happen, but not all the time, and it has never happened on the West Coast. So, Adrian Con in Vegas, that would be the only place I think it might work. Frankly, it's Vegas is not central necessarily, but it's really easy to fly to. So in a way, it is kind of central. Plus, I got Joe, the guy who pushed me to write Adrian's story, lives out there. So it'd be double duty. It'd be great to see him. I haven't seen him or his wife or his kids in, God, 5 years. Like that. It would make more sense to do it with like another author. Like I could call Tufo and be like, "Hey, let's go do a convention together." And between the two of us, we'd be able to get space because we have big enough fan bases together. However, he's socially anxious and terrified of crowds, so the likelihood of getting him to do that is pretty slim. But I could twist his arm. I bet you I could do it. I'll gang up on him with Tracy, his wife, and be like, "Come out into public, biatch." Be fun. I have looked into doing like 1 day events here, like renting out a event hall and like inviting in local authors to like have a table. But spaces are expensive. It's weird. Like little community centers, they're only like $1,000 for the day. It's like, what are you doing with that space anyway? It's just gonna be empty. Like, rent it out to me for a couple $100. So I think I love being able to promote other people, right? Like I think it's really cool when we can all get in a room together and everybody's got, similar similar enough writing or styles or genres or whatever that the people who come in to see me might like you, and people who come in to see you might like me, and it's just great for everybody. And plus, like being able to spend time around people who are trying to do this as a living is rejuvenating. You hear the people struggle with the same stuff that I struggle with is awesome. And meeting fans is just super fun. Like, I still don't believe that people read my shit and like it. So, like, when I meet people who are jazzed and knowledgeable about the story, it's like, really? Are you fucking with me? Or have you actually read the story? It's really, really fun. I got about 5 minutes left on this die, and then I'm going to bed. So it's perfect timing. I'm so happy. Any last minute questions? Any behind the scenes tidbits you're just jonesing to ask? Any advice you want to give me? Any complaints? You have me for like 3 more minutes. Can you give a new author any thoughts? Any thoughts on writing an EMP book? Both good questions. Author new thoughts. A new author thoughts. I always have thoughts I can give. The people always ask me for like advice on what to do next, right? Like I wrote a book, now what do I do? So like those are the questions that I get asked the most. Um, but I think if I was just going to give somebody who is writing advice, I would kind of echo something that I said earlier, where like write it because it's fun to write. Like write a story that entertains you as you write it and entertains you after you've written it. Because what entertains you will entertain somebody, and you cannot write a book that'll entertain everyone. So you might as well write one that's fun to write that will entertain people who have the same sensibilities as you. So, as far as being a new author goes, that would be advice that I would give. Just write something fun, write something that appeals to you and is fulfilling to write. Everything else will fall into place as long as you're willing to do the work. Ever writing an EMP book? The hat trick is the closest thing I've gotten to it, where it's a solar flare apocalypse, which is nature's EMP. Um, I have thought about it, but I don't have any storyline or characters in my head that have made it interesting enough to actually write. I need to be like really, really, really invested, and not yet. Monday, maybe. Nevada, Nevada, Rowan. Have to finish a good book. Intense feeling of being sad. Yep, yep. My wife does not finish books intentionally at times because she doesn't want to deal with that feeling. Do I get a similar feeling to that as a writer when I finish a book? When I finish it and it's like a series finish, I definitely get that feeling. Um, when I'm writing early books in a series and I finish them, usually I get like excited to start the next one. So it's like the exact opposite of that feeling, which is great because if I'm excited to write it, it's usually good and people like it. Um, So yeah, I do get that feeling. I do get the feeling of like longingness and missing characters and wishing I could be immersed in their world more. And that one's a complaint. You write too slow, Mr. George R. R. Martin. Back in the day, Mr. Beeve, when I first started writing AUD and I didn't have kids and I lived on my own, I was putting out like 5 or 6 books a year. Like legitimately 5 or 6 books a year. Because it was just me and I didn't have any other obligations on my time and I could just sit here writing all day long like I have today. Like I think I wrote 5,000 words today. And when you write 5,000 words in a month, you are putting out a book. That's like all it takes. Plus editing and whatever, but like the raw material, the first draft is done every month. But because I have kids in school and obligations in a house and other things, I'm not able to sustain that rate anywhere near what I would like to. And also, like I've got stuff getting translated into different languages now, and I've got to, that's something that I have to devote time to, and it's great because it's like other ways to make money, but it does slow down new projects. But as the kids get older, and as they care less and less about spending time with us, there's more time to be had because I don't have to be around to entertain them because they don't want anything to do with me some days, and then I can squirrel myself away in the office or in the living room and bust out a couple thousand words, which is great. Helps get stuff out faster for sure. Hearing excuses, not solutions. My solution is time. My solution to this is time. Just letting my family age. For a while, I entertained the idea of using Dragon speech recognition while I drove, so I could be driving down the road narrating my own book to be written. But I found out that the editing process took longer than just waiting to write because it just records what you say verbatim. So you got to go back in and like put all your punctuation in and capitalize everything. And you can do mass changes on some stuff, but it doesn't catch all of it. It's like having AI write for you. Like it doesn't quite get it. It just fucks everything up, which is why I'll never use AI to write. Also because I just like writing. I don't like writing AI prompts. Oh, Sean, you're welcome. And I'm not giving you time. I'm existing in a way where we can hang out. This time was gonna pass one way or the other. It's just fun to be able to spend it with other people. Plus, I'm all alone. So lonely in my 230-year-old farmhouse, which you can't tell by this freshly painted wall, but it's an old home. Doesn't appear to be haunted though, which is kind of a bummer. I feel like when you buy a home that old, like it should be haunted, like just by default, right? When we had the house inspected, I was down in the basement. We have like an old basement. It's like a fieldstone foundation, gravel floor, really low ceilings. And he was down there with me, and he was like, "Yeah, check this out and check this out." And here you got a giant boulder over here that's holding up this side of the house and all that jazz. And I was like, man, if this place isn't haunted, I'm going to be pissed because like it looks like there should be bodies buried in our basement, but there aren't any, which is a bummer. They did find a cannon in our garage from the Revolutionary War, apparently, which is pretty sweet. Talked about doing a sit down. Yeah. Yep. Yeah, that just never materialized. That when we were talking about that, we were getting ready to move. We were in the process of getting out of the house that we were renting and moving into this house, which we bought. And during all that, the kerfuffle of trying to figure stuff out, the time to record it never happened. And part of that is the way this house is laid out. My wife's office is right next door, and she's a therapist, and she requires quiet. So I can't be like jabbering in here while she's with the client, because if she hears me, that's a problem for HIPAA. We take HIPAA very seriously.
So I would have to record in a different area of the house, which isn't a huge problem. But it's just one of those things that like I haven't sat down to pick that all apart because it's just, you know, a busy life sucks. Yeah. Did you give up on that? No, I just haven't gotten around to it yet. That was a very long way to answer that very simple question. I think it would be fun. I think it would be fun. Yeah. All right. That being said, I am tired, and it's been swell. And I got my dice. I got these dice all polished up. I don't know if you can see the difference, but they are considerably more crystal clear now, and you can see through them. Whereas when we started, they were frosty, and you can actually see, you know, the light glinting off of them. And they're nice, facety smooth. Oh, see that 4 right there? Oh, look at that mirror finish. This motherfucker. Anyway, they're done. They look good. Send some pictures to Troy. See if he approves. Have a good night, everybody. Thank you for hanging out with me. I appreciate all your support as always. You're great people. Even if people don't like you, I think you're great people. So have a good night.